Welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. Whether you are looking for help recovering from mold illness or just want to learn more about creating a safe environment for your family, this podcast is the place for you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we have an episode of the Mold Matters Podcast for everyone. As usual, I'll introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Evans, and I've got my amazing co-host, Mike.
Well, it's co-host anyway.
Hey,
Yeah.
no, you're amazing, and
Well, Jer,
you're
don't stop.
you're not.
Don't stop.
Don't stop. Yeah. You're not Mike Adams, the health ranger, but you're still a great, amazing Mike.
That's
Adams.
right. That's right.
You're the mold
I have been
ranger.
confused with the health ranger before.
I know.
Yeah.
You're not the health ranger. You're the fun guy.
I am the fun guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mike, here we are again. Here to talk about some aspect of mold, and so
You know why? Because mold matters.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was like a plug.
Yeah.
Might as well tell people to subscribe when you say that.
Yeah. I don't know how to tell you to subscribe, but if you know how, subscribe.
I'd be curious to know how many people have subscribed because you've said it.
I'd be curious to know how many people know how to subscribe. I submit nobody knows how.
Well, need to know how many millennials are listening and Gen Z. So
Nobody my age knows how.
yeah. Okay. Well, today, Mike, we
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about water. I mean, water is a big part of mold. In fact, it's one of the essential ingredients for mold growth.
Some would say the essential ingredient for mold.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. If you're going to eliminate any of the essential ingredients, which are oxygen, nutrition, and water, your best bet is water.
Yeah, and even like the on the CDC website or the EPA website, their big answer, and they're not that far off, but their big answer is to control the mold, to control the water.
Yeah, and there's some truth in that.
Yeah.
And so today, I mean, that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're going to talk about an aspect of water that is known as wicking. And we have talked about certain aspects of water and its ability to wick into or up through surfaces. And there's a good web page you were mentioning that talks about
There
this.
is, yeah, there is. It's it talks about water and actually leaks. It's called wicking leaks.
Yeah, wicking leaks. Oh man, that was
Thanks for setting me up there, Jared.
Yeah, I gave you a softball there.
Yeah.
That was for your friend Archie, who
That's for
listens to
Archie.
these.
Archie in Australia. Yeah.
That was a good joke.
Archie,
So, yeah,
Archie and Tom and the gang.
To compare and contrast here, wicking versus wiki, a little different, but wicking. How would you describe wicking to someone who doesn't? I mean, it kind of makes sense, but give us
So let me give you a real life example.
okay.
So I think I've mentioned this before, but what we see all the time in homes, particularly homes with basements, is the water that comes off of the roof. Oftentimes, especially with new architecture now, where you have so many different roof lines and coves and different things,
Yeah.
you can end up with just massive amounts of water coming down one downspout.
Yeah.
And if that downspout isn't directed away from the house, or if the landscaping around the house doesn't flow away from the house, if it flows into the house
Yeah.
from level, you're going to have a problem. But what happens is, when you talk about wicking, is the soil first gets saturated, and it will get really, really saturated. It's amazing how much water even just a drip, drip, drip over a long term can create.
Yeah.
And then once that soil is saturated, because of capillary action, it wants to go from wet to dry. So it's going to go from the wet soil. Well, what's right next to the wet soil is the dry foundation. It's going to wick into that.
Yeah.
And then from there, it again gets saturated. Then it wants to wick into the 2x4s in the basement, and then eventually you're wicking into the sheetrock. And at that point is where you notice, man, I've got mold growing in my home.
Yeah.
So
I looked up the stat while you were talking.
yeah,
So 1 second dripping, a 1 second dripping faucet wastes over 5 gallons per day. So that equates to 5 gallons per day.
so imagine going to the side of your
That's
house.
crazy.
Yeah, go to the side of your house and pour 5 gallons of water down the side of your foundation
Yeah.
every day at noon.
Yeah.
That's what that one drip
Yeah.
does.
That's if my math's correct, that's 2,083 gallons per year.
That's
And
good math.
Basically the math
That's good
that
math.
Google
Jared.
told me.
Oh, okay. You didn't do that on the fly.
No.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that's
It's
pretty
an incredible amount of water.
It's an incredible stat, and it really goes to, you know, you talked about the downspouts. I mean, it kind of display, you know, if they aren't working, or if they're just barraging the foundation. I mean, that's gallons and gallons and gallons all at once.
I've said this before on the podcast, I'm sure, but my personal opinion is you are better off without rain gutters if you have rain gutters that are not working correctly.
Yeah.
In other words, if your rain gutter is taking half of the roof and dumping it into one
Spot,
square foot area by the foundation,
Yeah.
you'd be better off not having any rain gutters, and at least it would spread that water out over 20 or 30 linear feet instead of all in one spot.
Yeah. So different substrates or materials have a different, a capacity for absorbing water, right? We often talk in terms of porous, non-porous surfaces. I think a physicist might argue that everything is. I think my brother Jason would say that everything is porous,
very porous. If you truly understood,
and so, but obviously, non-porous is usually hard surfaces like your granite countertops or hard plastic or metal. That's probably better. Metal and plastic are more considered hard, non-porous.
Yeah.
Porous. Obviously, the porous materials absorb a lot, can hold and absorb a lot more water. So when we're thinking in terms of construction materials, and their capacity to absorb. So you say you have a water incident.
Yeah.
You mentioned, water. You often talk about how cement is kind of a big sponge.
Big hard sponge. Yeah.
Big hard sponge.
Uh-huh.
That should
big
not
hard
be,
heavy sponge.
Yeah. That's where you should be.
Big hard heavy useless sponge.
Yeah. That's where you should be careful not to equate hard with non-porous.
Right. Yeah.
Because that thing's hard as a rock. I mean, it's hard as cement, actually. But it is very
crazy porous.
Yeah, crazy porous. Absorbs very easily, and that's why they waterproof with the tar and things like that. But think of the building materials. If you go through them in your mind, I mean, some of them, obviously wood, carpet. We've talked about
I can
carpet
even take it a step farther though. Talk about wood, just real quick. Is when I was a kid back in the day, when when I walked to school uphill in the snow, going to school and going home from school. Yeah. Right. We built homes with really hard lumber.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's
like
not.
What kind of wood are we talking? Do you remember? Like oak?
Well, no, but it would be really good pine that didn't come off a pine farm.
I see.
It's, real wood that had been growing for years and years and years.
Yeah.
As opposed to, now they have, companies that's all they do is grow pine.
Yeah.
So and they put all kinds of chemicals in it so it'll grow faster.
Yeah.
And it's just not nearly as hard as what the old lumber used to be.
I see.
And then you also have, along with that, you have particle board, or we call it pressed wood, where they take just the shavings of wood, mix glue with it, and then call that a piece of plywood.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is way more porous than what lumber was.
Yeah. Well, porous, and this is a side note, but those chemicals and glues and stuff they put in there are really good nutrition for mold.
Great nutrition.
I mean, wood itself in its purest form, I don't think, depending on the wood, it's not necessarily the greatest food source. I mean, it's good, but then you think of paper. We're going to talk about sheetrock in a minute. Sheetrock that has two pieces of paper. It's a paper sandwich.
It is. Yeah.
It's a gypsum.
No, it's
sandwich
a gypsum sandwich.
with paper bread.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about cardboard. Those types of things. We talked about that last podcast. Get your cardboard out of your cold storage.
Yeah.
Because if you get water or humidity, that's where it's going to latch onto. So, yeah, I think so. In fact, let's go there. Let's go to sheetrock, because that's again, think of a water event. Wood will obviously absorb the water. You talked about cement. your linoleum is probably not going to absorb the water very easily. Your
Yeah,
ceramic
it'll-
toilets,
Right.
not really a big worry.
Although I will say this, the underside of a toilet lid,
Uh-huh.
is that what it's called? It's on the back of the tank.
The tank, yeah.
Not the thing you sit on.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that's called a seat.
The tank lid.
That's the seat, Mike. The lid,
Maybe in Australia they call it a lid.
maybe.
You have to tell us.
We'll ask Tom.
Australia friends.
Archie. But the underneath side of the lid, which is, I don't know ceramic, the industry, but I think that's non-glazed.
Yeah.
It's not shiny like the top,
that's true.
right?
That's true.
That always, not always, but often grows mold.
Yeah, the underside of that lid.
Just because it's a lot more porous than the rest of the.
Yeah, they haven't finished it off.
Yeah.
And
It takes in the
that's-
humidity and the moisture. And,
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So, let's talk through sheetrock and water. Something we've kind of talked about in recent times is the ability of that sheetrock to wick, and this is most common maybe in a couple of scenarios. If you have a leak, behind a wall, obviously the water is kind of concentrated around the leak area, but the water will expand quite far away from the source.
right. Yeah.
Or basement flood, bathroom flood, wherever there's a flood. I mean, it could be up 1 inch high on the on the sheetrock, or it actually. I think I told you this. Our neighbor had a flood,
Uh-huh.
and the mold guy came over, and
He's a mold guy or the fun guy? He's a mold guy.
He was neither. Because here's
Okay,
what he
all
did.
right.
He said
He was neither.
because the water came up 1 inch in the whole basement from the
Right.
flood, but they had baseboards everywhere, and
Okay.
so the guy they got all the water out, and the guy said, "Do we need to worry about mold there?" And he's like, "No, the baseboards blocked the water from getting
That's
to the sheetrock."
Those are good baseboards.
Yeah,
Those
really
are
good
very,
baseboards.
very good baseboards. You have
Really
to pay
good.
extra for those
Yeah,
baseboards.
you really do. And I thought, and I went down to that basement, and I felt queasy, and I was
Yeah. Did you tell him?
No, because it wasn't the time or place, and I
Yeah.
didn't know how to bring it up. But I really worry because who knows what happened, how far it wicked up, but I'm confident.
Of course it got
that
behind
water
that
got behind that.
baseboard. Yeah.
And I did look up, the EPA did kind of an interesting study on how quickly water wicks, and I'm sure there's tons of variables, but it said they submerged the bottom piece of gypsum board sheetrock in water.
Did you find this? Did you find this water on Wikipedia?
This article?
Yeah. Okay.
No, I didn't. Surprisingly, let me see.
Just don't want to get off the subject, but
Okay.
Nez didn't even smile at that joke.
I know.
Nothing.
I know.
All right.
So within let's see, how many minutes? Oh, within 3 hours it had wicked 6 inches.
Okay.
So the bottom piece was submerged within 6 inches. Or within 3 hours, it had gone up 6 inches,
Right.
and within 3.5 days, it had gone up 40 inches. Or no,
No, 14 inches. I think
14
you told me
inches.
before.
Yeah, almost
you told me
15
before.
inches.
Yeah.
So over a foot in
Right.
3.5 days.
So,
So
this is what's crazy about sheetrock, though, is it not only takes the water on fast, obviously by those stats, but it releases it slow,
yes,
which makes it way, way worse for mold.
yeah,
Because
I totally agree.
It's feeding just enough water to that paper sandwich
Mm-hmm.
for mold to start to grow, and it's going to keep supplying that mold the water for a long, long time because it just emits the water really, really slow.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I don't know, moral of the story here with sheetrock, but I mean, if you have a water event, you really want to jump on it quickly, number one.
Yeah.
And then
I'll tell you one thing other people make the mistake of. I see this all the time, is they'll have a water issue from behind the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a basement or a leaky pipe in the wall or whatever.
yeah,
They'll put, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but they'll put a fan on it without opening it up somehow, right?
yeah,
Just put the fan right on the
pointed on the exterior part of the wall, right?
the exterior of the interior room, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they'll run it, and then they'll put the moisture meter on it. Yep, we're all dried out. Well, you probably aren't because
Yeah.
that moisture is trapped inside there.
yeah,
So you got to be real cognizant of the fact that that's going to take a while to dry that out, and you may want to pop some holes to be able to get some circulation in there to dry it out quicker.
yeah. Yeah, because those moisture meters, I mean, even the best ones maybe go 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah.
Unless you have a probe that you can pierce into and go deep into the wall cavity.
Right.
But your standard moisture meter is really a surface meter.
Yeah.
So you, like you're saying, you dry off the the surface,
Got that dried off with the
put a
fan.
test on there, and it could be
soaking wet inside that wall.
it really could.
Yeah.
Hey, and that reminds me, on this wicking topic, you remember Dr. Pompa's house, how he had that wicking scenario in his wall cavities?
Yeah. Kind of. Are you talking on the west side of the house?
Yeah, where he had that guy cut it open.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out, I mean, he figured it out more than we did because we weren't there. He had some guys come look at it, but just on the very back side, it was an exterior wall, so he opened it up, and you wouldn't have noticed it with a moisture meter. We didn't, just on
right.
the surface. But against the very back part where it's the OSB
Mhm.
and the studs, in the back corner, there was, water marks like it had
Right.
been wet. And he figured out that when it rains and stuff, some water gets against the house and it just wicks up.
Oh, that's right.
Into
and
the
then
house.
and then if the wind blew just the right direction,
Yeah.
is when he would get the headache.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
when the wind would come up and blow on that side, it would pull the mold into his house, and he'd
Yeah.
feel weird. So I don't know how high it wicked. I mean, that one didn't wick more than 6 inches, if my recollection's correct. But it kind of just illustrates that idea of capillary action, as
Yeah.
they say,
Yeah.
kind of wicking up to a wall. So, and I think for someone who's in the mold remediation industry, I think understanding that wicking capillary action is really helpful.
And I have mentioned this a million times, but I think it's worth mentioning again. I run into so many people that have water problems with their associated with their foundation,
Yeah.
and their first thought is, I think I have a crack. I think I'm looking at a $20,000 or $30,000 repair.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, I don't know. You may have a crack, you may not have a crack, but that's probably not what your water issue is, because if you have water around the foundation, whether it's cracked or not, it's going to get through that foundation.
Yeah.
So the idea is to get the water away from your home, and the simple tricks that we've always talked about is make sure your rain gutters are installed correctly. They should be flowing slightly towards the downspout. They should be clear of all debris, and then when they come down, they should extend away from the house 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
And then make sure in that same area that the landscaping is built up,
Yeah.
so it naturally wants to flow away from the house.
Mm-hmm. You know what I just thought of, kind of random, but if say there were, I was thinking if someone wanted to kind of test this wicking concept,
Mhm.
and you've probably seen this before, you just take a household sponge and dip the bottom of it in some water.
Oh yeah,
And you'll
Yeah.
see it kind of move up the sponge, even though the water's way down lower.
or a paper towel on a
Or
spill.
a paper towel on a spill.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So if we were to have, do classes for kids that want to be mold remediators when they grow up,
And that is a lot of kids.
a lot of kids,
Yeah, a lot of kids want
have some summer camps and stuff.
Mhm. Yeah,
That could be
yeah.
one of
two-week mold camp for the kids.
that would be one of
Would be
them.
great. Yeah.
Everyone get a paper towel and a sponge.
Uh-huh. And a
And-
cup of water. Please don't spill. And right after this, we'll have lunch and nap time.
Man, we're gonna have a lot of requests after this one.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
So
We'll do it. We'll have a camp.
we really should.
$3.99 for your kids.
$3.99.
Includes lunch.
Oh man, that's too good.
Yeah.
Anything else to say on wicking, Mike?
No, I think it's just good to know. It's it's just basic. Is it physics? I guess.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
Wet
we
wants
we
to go
still
to-
need to talk to Jason.
Yeah.
Get him on the line.
Yeah, we do
Jason
need to
is
get a
our
physicist.
physicist, but
A resident physicist.
yeah,
I mean, in short, wet wants to go to dry.
correct.
And-
That really is remediation 101.
Yeah, wet wants
Yeah.
to go to dry, and that comes into play so many times. So, anyways, I think that's probably good for today about wicking. Again, you could probably go to Wikipedia for that, or where Wicking links.
Wikipedia or WikiLeaks, or be careful because sometimes once it gets really really moldy in there,
Yeah.
it's gross. It's wiki.
Yeah. Oh, Wiki.
Yeah. Yeah. So be careful with that.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Have
Take
a
care.
great one.
Thanks for listening to the Mold Matters podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more in-depth information on mold illness and recovery.